We are back for season 3, and I'm Gina Sim. And today we are doing something a little special. We are actually interviewing the infamous Dr. Tara because, we want to know who Dr. Tara is, what she's all about. There's a ton of things and a ton of questions that I want to ask her. And I'm so excited that we get to spend an entire episode just talking about you, Dr. Tara. How are you?
I'm good. I don't know why, but all of a sudden I got a little nervous.
I'm putting you on the hot seat, girl. Get ready.
Uh-oh. I'm ready. And I think it's important to share that we got some feedback from some of our fans who thought it was important to know a little bit more about us. So
yes,
we're both going to be interviewing one another in season 3 to give back a little bit to our fans so that they understand who we are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you ask and we deliver. But yeah, we did have a few people say, I want to know more about Dr. Tara and Gina Sim. So here we are. We're going to start with Dr. Tara and talk about who you are. So, I mean, we know we've been listening to you now for 2 full seasons on the Welloff Podcast. Mm-hmm. We know you're a CEO of a behavioral health company and a psychotherapist. Mm-hmm. And we know you're a mom and a wife and you live in New Jersey. But you know what? I need to know more. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, good Lord. I never know where to begin. But yes, you're all of those things. And I think this is a lesson for so many people because we identify who we are by what we do, but that isn't necessarily what we are. And I remember a long time ago, because I'm into psychics, I read cards, I'm very much into the spiritual realm of life. And when I had a reading with a shaman, a very interesting woman from Mexico years ago, probably 20 years ago, and I said something to her about, like she asked me who I was, and I think the first thing I said was that I'm a mother. And she kind of scolded me about how we're women and we can't just be one thing, and that she only had one child. And she's like, what would happen if my son died? Then who would I be? I'm so much more than a mother. And she kind of planted this seed in me to really be mindful of that, that we're never just one thing. I'm not just a CEO. I'm not just a psychotherapist. I'm not only a podcast co-host, that we're so many different things. But I mean, who am I? I'm everything that you said. But when people ask me that, I always say, well, I'm born and raised in New Jersey, and I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. So I'm a city girl, and I've been down at the shore since the late 80s and never left the area. So Jersey girl through and through. But, I don't know. I don't know. When you ask me that, what do you want to know?
I kind of want to know, what do you like to do? I know you're into psychics. Talk about how you are, in what your likes and your hobbies and that kind of stuff. And then we'll dive into the deep stuff.
I like to do all sorts of things. I mean, it's very important for me to move my body. So I love to walk. That's probably my number one form of exercise. I love bike riding, but everything I do is chill. I'm not looking to run a marathon. I'm not looking to, get a Peloton and go crazy. I move my body, but gently. I love yoga. So those are my 3 main forms of exercise. I am a sailor. My husband and I have a sailboat, so we love to sail and be by the water, which was something that I learned through him because I was a city girl. I didn't grow up, by the water. I really couldn't swim a stroke until I was 35 years old and had a pool of my own, and still I wouldn't, I don't go in water above my head because I'll drown.
My God.
I have to touch the bottom. Yeah, so I really
Fun fact.
Can't
Did
swim
not know
technically.
that. Oh my God.
Yeah, I could swim in a pool from one side to the pool bar or something. But
to the pool bar.
Wow. So
okay.
I can't really swim. But, I always tell people, when you grow up in a city, they open up the fire hydrants in the summer when you're hot. There's no pools, none of that. I didn't grow up with that.
Got it.
But I do love to be by the water and live on the water, which, for listeners, when you see Gina and I doing photo shoots with water in the background, that's at my house. I love to read. I read every day something. I am very spiritual. I start every day with prayers and pulling angel cards for myself, like to kind of set me straight and set a tone for the day and give me guidance. I love spending quality time with the people that I love. And I know we're doing our mental tips on Mondays, and I shared in one that, you know, we should keep our social circle like a dime, small and more valuable versus a nickel, which is bigger but not as valuable.
I love that.
Yeah. So I mean, I love to spend time with the people I love. I love to go out to eat. I feel like I'm an amateur foodie and food critic. I love to go out and eat. So, I mean, I really do enjoy life. I love the opera.
Oh, yes, you do.
Yes, I love the opera. My husband and I are patrons of the Metropolitan Opera in New York City.
You're a big Dolly fan?
I do. I love Dolly Parton.
I mean, you know.
I just love her whole persona. Yes. How she's just so like her own brand and sweet and bubbly, and I love it. But I love music. I love going to concerts. So, I mean, you know, I think I'm a well-rounded person.
You also have a thing for theaters because your husband, Paul, directs plays and all of that. So,
yes. My husband's an actor and director, and he's been pretty much in theater his whole life. And he's the director of a local repertory theater company. So he does about 5 or 6 shows a year. So I do spend a lot of time in the theater just with his shows alone, but do get to New York, to Broadway frequently. And like I said, concerts. I love music.
Nice. You just saw Katy Perry. How was that?
Amazing. Who doesn't love Katy Perry?
And
I know. She's a girly girl. I love a girl's girl.
And then you have 4 grown children.
Yes. So the kids range in age from 22 to 34. And we have 3 girls and 1 boy. And they're amazing humans. And, you know, sometimes people like kind of get misty or nostalgic wanting their kids to be little again. But I love them for who they are at every age, and honestly would never want to go back to them.
I don't blame
you. Except that I was younger, but like I love them for who they are. I mean, and it's an interesting journey, like honoring your children as adults. And a fellow therapist who I admire and love and is a friend once said to me that the biggest mistake parents of adult children make is that they believe they have unlimited access to them. And that always stuck with me. And, you know, I think that it's hard for a lot of parents. And I know for my mother, it was very hard to see me as an adult and stop looking at me or treating me like a baby. And so for parents that are listening, it's really important. There's like, I think, a pivotal age in adolescence where you really need to start shifting how you interact with your children and how you see them and speak to them, and you need to honor them for the emerging adults that they are, or the adult that they actually are, because they need that to grow, and they need that, and you want them to be independent. You want them to do their own thing. It's not healthy to keep your kids so tightly knit to you.
I can understand that for sure. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Not a mom, but I have a mom.
Right.
I am someone's kid. But I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper. You're CEO of this big company, which I don't think people understand how big your company is. You have like 500 employees in 9 locations. It's a lot. Oh, yeah. 15 locations. Just 15, kidding. Holy crap.
Yes.
But you're really a pioneer in the mental health space, and you do a lot with supporting women. And I know that you have a strong passion for that. So where did that passion come from?
I do believe that everything has a genesis. And as a therapist, when I work with clients, I always go back to the beginning because I feel that's important, and not every therapist does that. But for me, I feel like it probably started in utero, because honestly, and prenatal consciousness and infant mental health is real. People don't think that babies.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like babies in utero. You see, you hear, you feel, you learn. You just don't come out of the womb like you're absorbing stuff. So,
Huh.
but anyway, like that's a whole conversation for another day. But
Yeah, maybe we'll do a podcast on that.
So, my beginnings, they were not easy. My mother was the only child in an Italian American family, so like a little princess, and she was treated as such. And she got pregnant at 17 by an older man from Puerto Rico, and older as in like, I think he was 24, my father. So older, and he was dark, brown man, really didn't speak English. But my mother was very involved in our local church, and there was a lot of Hispanic parishioners there, and she actually was friends with my aunt and a bridesmaid in her wedding, so that's how she met my father when he came from Puerto Rico. But anyway, she found herself pregnant at 17, and she was very isolated and naive. And when she realized she was pregnant, she hid it from my grandparents, who eventually found out. And when they found out, she was probably close to 6 months pregnant, and they were going to take her to New York City for a late-term abortion.
Oh my God.
And my mother ran away. And, this story, I think, is more important because my mother was a very, naive, proper, scared of her own shadow, like meek and mild teenager. Like, she wasn't rambunctious, she wasn't rebellious. So, to hear her tell the story, it's really moving because she had this whole escape essentially planned with my father. And she'll say she snuck down the stairs and she can't believe that my grandmother didn't wake up or hear the stairs creaking, and she can't believe the dog didn't bark. And so anyway, she ran away to Puerto Rico with my father to save my life.
Wow.
So that I wouldn't be aborted and that I would be born. And they stayed there for a solid month or so, and my grandparents were people of influence in the community. Like, they were friends with the priest, they were friends with the cops, and so the priest from our church was really trying to find out from the people in Newark that were from the Puerto Rican community, trying to find out where my mother was, and eventually lied and said my grandfather had a heart attack. And then my uncle told the priest the truth, because most Hispanic people are very God-fearing and religious, and the priest, it's like you can't lie to a priest.
No.
So my uncle told the truth, and they found out that my mother was in Puerto Rico. And long story short, my parents came back to New Jersey and pretended like they were, I think they pretended like they were married, but they weren't.
Okay.
Because they were trying to protect me. I feel like just that piece, and it's taken me, 50 plus years to actually really acknowledge that.
Wow.
The fire that burns in me, I think the tenacity, the love of, promoting women, it started then. That probably was the spark, in utero, for my mother to do something so courageous. But, it wasn't all great. My father at that time had a problem with alcohol and was violent, and he was physically abusive to my mother and to me, at a year old.
Oh my God.
The story goes, I was crying and he was frustrated and he picked me up and threw me against a wall.
Oh my God.
So my mother left him. My grandparents really ran my father out of town because they used statutory rape as, they basically said they would put him in jail. So he left.
Wow.
And I didn't really know him again until I was almost 20 years old.
Wow.
So, I lived, a large part of my life not knowing him, hearing terrible things about him, But then my mother and I really relied on my grandparents because she was, at the end of the day, a teenager.
Right.
So, the two of us really grew up together. And, my grandmother certainly was a big influence on me. She ruled the roost. So even though my grandfather was present and a kind and sweet man, my grandmother was in charge. So again, strong woman, she was really in charge of everything, including me and my mother. So in some ways, my mother and I were raised almost like siblings. And, there were things that I didn't care for, but they were normative for her. She was out dating, and she went back to college and went to college when I was about 3 and became a teacher. So I felt left behind a lot because I wanted to be with my mother, but was always with my grandparents because my mother was a young
she was trying
woman.
To live her life.
Yeah. I mean, when I graduated high school, my mother was 35 years old.
Oh my God.
So, there were many years where I was very angry with my mother and didn't speak to her for that reason because I needed so much from her growing up. And now I know, because I'm a grown up and I'm a therapist, and I, am understanding that she didn't have it to give, that we were growing up simultaneously. But, my childhood was not easy. And, when we were on our own and not with my grandparents, there were times when we didn't have enough to eat. And she was not in healthy relationships, and I witnessed more violence and substance use and, trauma. So no accident that I'm a therapist, but, I can tell you with confidence that I lived probably the first 30 years of my life being really angry and pissed, and, that I didn't have a nuclear family, and that, my mother and I had different last names, and I didn't have siblings, and I didn't have what other people have. But now I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, because all of that stuff is what made me who I am today. And, I always teach people this saying, that we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are, based on what we've experienced and the traumas that we've had. But it's given me so many gifts, like so many survival skills. Like, children shouldn't have to know how to read a room and know, like, if someone's good or bad or safe or not. But I mean, hey, that's what
you were.
What life
You were
taught
thrown
me,
into that.
Yeah, but it's like, because of it, I have exceptional reads on people, and I'm highly intuitive. And, I do believe that people enter the counseling profession, social work, etc., because we're all wounded healers. Like I always say, like, if you had an easy life and you had a pool table in your basement and lived in a cul-de-sac, like, you probably are going to be like an accountant or something. You're not going to become a therapist, so but I feel like I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't experience what I experienced. But I do believe that the central theme of my life, has always been female centric. It was me and my mother until, she was married twice, and, until my stepdad, who really was present for most of my life. But for the most part, it was she and I and my grandmother, so, and then until I was 14, I had an aunt who was my godmother, who was like right there in lockstep with my grandmother. So it's like I was always insulated by a community of women.
Wow.
And because I don't have, now I do have a half brother and half sister that came later in life, but I'm a one and only as it relates to my mother and father. And, I spent my whole life singular, really, without siblings, but my friendships are precious. My friends are all people that I would take a bullet for, and I know the same is true. And I cherish the women in my life, they're my sisters because I
Yeah.
didn't have that. And so I also feel like everything that I experienced taught me how to be a good friend and how to nurture, because I knew what I wanted. So I always give what I expect in return. And even mothering, like everything I did with my children is what I wish would have been my reality. And there's probably a lot of overcompensating there, but I mean, they turned out all right. So
well, and I'm not complaining. You did too. I knew bits and pieces of your story, but I didn't know this whole story of what your mom went through and what you went through as a young child. And I guess it's really difficult to see things like the physical abuse and the substance use, and as a young kid trying to navigate through that with parents is no small task. And I know that there are so many people out there that have parents that are narcissists, that are alcoholics and have substance problems. So how do you think you were able to kind of transition from that to what you are today? Because you really kind of took that bag of apples and you turned it into the golden apples. Like you are a CEO of a major company.
Yeah.
You are a very successful therapist. You're a wonderful person, and you've raised wonderful children, and your husband's wonderful, and you've created this life that is just, again, wonderful. So how did that transition happen?
Well, I mean, none of it was easy, and certainly none of it has come to fruition without plenty of mistakes made along the way, and previous relationships that didn't serve me. But I think for me, a central piece is my faith has always been very strong. And even when I was a little girl, and I went to Catholic school my whole life until my last 2 years of high school, I went to public school because we moved to the shore. But I don't know why, but like I always have had a really, really strong relationship with God. And I'm not super religious now. I mean, I do go to church, and
your husband's
I'm more
a priest,
spiritual than I am.
I was like, wait, we left that part out. Your husband
My
is a
husband
priest.
is a priest. My
Episcopalian,
priest.
so he could be married.
In the Episcopal Church,
Yes.
yes, they're allowed to be married. So yes, there is that. So obviously, God is very a focal point in our lives. But for me, it's not so much the religion
Right.
of it and the dogma of it, but the faith. And I just remember, I remember being a little girl, and my grandmother had mental health issues.
Okay.
So there was that. And so she had a large hand in raising me, and she was, she's wonderful, and I take only the good stuff because she taught me how to be a good wife and a good mother. But and she was very wise, but because life taught her, but she had her shortcomings for sure. And she made me, because I was young and impressionable, very ashamed of my ethnicity, ashamed of the color of my skin, but and she would say things to me like, "You'll never be as smart as your mother."
Oh my God.
And it'd be like, she's not like you, she would say to my mother. But I would, in my head, I would have conversations with God and be like, I know that's not true. I know that's not true. And I don't know. But, because of the work that I do clinically, I always know that you only need one person to see you through a different lens, or to make you feel important. And I always go back to, I had a teacher in 7th grade. And now today I know that I have ADHD, but I didn't know it when I was little. And I used to get in trouble all the time for talking. I used to get my seat moved out into the hallway.
Oh my God.
And so much
I can't
shame
picture
with
you.
that.
Hold on. I can't picture you getting in trouble ever.
Yeah, only for talking.
Only for talking.
And, it would be hard for me to focus. I remember in 2nd grade, and this is why I say to this day that I hate math, because I was daydreaming. And I remember it was math, and I remember what the workbook looked like, and I raised my hand and I said, "Sister, what page are we on?" Because I couldn't figure it out. I was so nervous, and she came and she punched me. Yes. back then you could do stuff like that. But anyway, so I had my troubles, like in elementary school, like focusing, talking, and my teachers, I felt like, didn't like me. But in 7th grade, I had a teacher, and I don't know if she's alive. I've tried to look her up because I want to tell her how important she was to me. Her name was Mrs. Turk, and she loved me. Like, I know she loved me, and she encouraged me, and she had patience with me, and she made me run for the president of student council.
Wow.
She saw something in me, and I ran, and I won. And in 8th grade, I was the president of student council for my whole Catholic school.
Oh my God.
K through 8. K through 8. And I really feel like that was like a very pivotal moment for me, where someone saw me differently and saw that I had value and that I had worth and encouraged me. And, you know, she's definitely like high on my list. And I've been blessed since then with really beautiful female mentors. And so I try to be that for others. Like, I will always try to lift women up, encourage them, give them opportunity. And I'm not a man hater. I have a son, I have a husband, I love men, but men don't need the leg up that we do. They still make more money. They still get better opportunities. So I feel like it's so important for me to continue to do that. And I'll do it till I'm old and gray, until the day I die, because we need that. We need someone to see our potential, our gifts, our beauty, whatever it is.
Absolutely, 100%. And I know that you've also gone through a divorce in your life as well. So all of these things just have really shaped who you've become, which has been this powerhouse of a woman. Like, you've won awards, you do speaking engagements, you're on panels, you're on TV shows, you're on podcasts. Like, I don't know if we even, like, our listeners don't really even know the powerhouse woman that you are. So, you know, to even be doing this podcast with you, I am honored that, you know, I'm a marketing person at iHeartMedia. No, and like sharing your wisdom with us, because you are so well educated. And you know what else I love is that, you know, your people are always not nervous, I guess, but like, you know, when they're friends with somebody who's a therapist, I'm sure you get this all the time. Like, are you analyzing me right now? Are you evaluating me?
I always say I'm off the
clock. I think that one of the first times we hung out, I was like kind of telling you some of my background, and then I looked at you and I'm like, you're judging me right now. But anyway, well, thank you so much for opening up and sharing your story with us, and, you know, getting to know who the Dr. Tara that we listen to all the time really is. And, you know, of course, we can't end this episode without asking our infamous question of, what does Welloff mean to you?
I know. And I love that question. Every time we ask it, I love to watch our guests kind of ponder on it and say, great question.
Yeah.
You know what? I will say this. The answer for me is probably different every day, because every day presents just different circumstances and different blessings. But in this moment, I will say Welloff means knowing who you are, having boundaries, respecting them, and knowing your value and your worth, and never deviating from that, you know, making decisions because of it. Because there's a freedom in that, there's an autonomy in that, and it's just a good feeling. You know, if you go to out to dinner and you have a lousy meal, you're going to be pissed because, right? You paid and you didn't get what you wanted.
Right.
Or if you buy a new shirt and it has a hole in it, you're going to be upset because you didn't get value, right? So I feel like our relationships need to be the same. Like, if I'm feeling just depleted, or I'm at my max for the day, and if someone needs something from me, if I pick up that phone knowing that I don't have it, I'm going to hang up feeling like bled dry,
right?
You know? But so it's like little things like that, just like knowing your limits and having the words to say, I love you, I'm here for you, can we do this tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So that I can I'm wiped out, whatever. Like, just being able to have that kind of language, I feel, is well off. And in this moment, that's what my answer is.
Well said. Well off. Well said. No, that's really great because, you know, you are an extremely busy person. And, you know, when you spend your time and energy with certain people or certain things, like, they're really worth your time. So I think that's a beautiful answer from a beautiful person.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, my love.
Well, thank you. And thank you again for doing this journey with me and together creating this Welloff podcast, because hopefully if we help at least one person, we've done our job.
That's right. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you.
Love you.